UCLA's game against the shorthanded Nebraska is a must-win for Tim Skipper if he wants the permanent job.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for supporting. Welcome back, everydayers. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your first bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. What we're talking about in this show, we're going to end things off with another UCLA basketball coach, Corey Close, frustrated with effort. What does that mean? Is that a sign of something bad for UCLA women's basketball this year? 2, do the Bruins have a chance to make a bowl game? Is it realistic with this treacherous road down the stretch? But let's lead off with, hey, UCLA has all of a sudden been shifted to be favored against Nebraska. Now, this Nebraska game, I thought UCLA would have a chance. Last year, Deshaun Foster's team went into Lincoln with Dylan Raiola at quarterback, and the Bruins took down Matt Rule's team in Lincoln with a team that was similarly subpar to start the year. This year, different things obviously transpired, but Tim Skipper needs to win maybe every single one of these games in terms of to get to a bowl, when it comes to earning the permanent spot, to get Spencer McLaughlin of Locked On College Football to buy a UCLA jersey and wear it. All of these reasons make it a must-win, and then all of a sudden, wait, Dylan Raiola gets hurt against Nebraska, all right? And you're taking on a Nebraska team who is going to start a backup freshman quarterback, TJ Lateef, all right? And for Lateef, this is what his numbers are coming into the year, all right? 16 of 19, 260 yards, and a touchdown. He's got about 50 yards rushing the ball on 11 carries and a couple of scores, all right? But this is a Nebraska team that when Lateef came in last week versus USC, fumbled three times in the game. Didn't lose any, but that just shows you that in the limited opportunity, he fumbled 3 times. UCLA is going against a Nebraska team that's also missing a couple of their starting tackles. Mind you, this is already a few weeks removed from when Minnesota went in there, took down Nebraska with 9 sacks of Raiola. So for a team that's already missing some of their offensive linemen, that's missing their starting quarterback, this is that time of the season that Nebraska begins to falter. All right. And it's not even a Matt Rule thing. This has been going on for well over a decade at Nebraska. They've been searching for something too. The last time UCLA hosted Nebraska, you could argue it was the peak of these two teams in the last 15 years. All right. From 2010 to 2015, when UCLA hosted Nebraska, went to Lincoln in those 2 years in 2012 to 2013, that was probably around the peak for those two teams in their programs. Last few years have been dreadful. And they're obviously trying to build things. Matt Rule's been extended, so there's a little different feel for him. For Tim Skipper, you lose this game at home when you're vying for a bowl berth, when you've had obviously the week to prepare and the bye week to rest and recover is going to be a little different now that the starting quarterback for Nebraska is gone. They've got some injuries on the O-line. They've had some struggles. But UCLA and Kevin Coyle should easily be able to handle this. This is almost similar, if not worse, to what UCLA is going to face when they faced Maryland just a few weeks ago at home during the homecoming game. All right? This is a matchup designed for us to breathe easy. This could be the equivalent of UCLA blowing out Michigan State, except at home. This is what this game should be. A 38-13, something comfortable, maybe a 17-point win, whatever it is, but you've had the week to prepare, and Nebraska is just getting injured at the wrong time. They have to travel west. The Bruins have had the 2 weeks off. They were humbled on national television, and Tim Skipper has to impress this coaching committee if he wants the permanent job, to even showcase that, hey, this place can still be a vibe. It is at the Rose Bowl, even though the Bruins are trying to leave it, according to the LA Times from a week ago. Still, the Rose Bowl's home. UCLA is wanting to reattract the former commits, attract new commits, and become a buzzing, trending place in the offseason when the portal opens in January for whether it's Tim Skipper or not, and namely to get some of those high school recruits to come to UCLA and choose, hey, if they fortify this spot here and there, they can change things. And now against a Nebraska team that should have easily been well over what was a gaudy win total in the preseason, is sitting there 6-3, fumbling themselves out of what could have been playoff contention to now they're even going to be 6-6 to end the year at this point. This is tailor-made to be the easiest game left on UCLA's schedule. And that's just because of unfortunate circumstances. 1, beyond this, the travel. 2, the injury. 3, the ability for the Bruins already to be rested for 2 weeks. It seems like a recipe for disaster if you're going to be a person yelling, "Go Big Red." I better to see minimal Nebraska fans. And that's not going to be the case. There'll be a lot of Nebraska fans. But I don't want to hear any "Go Big Red" chants. I don't want to hear any of them because UCLA should hopefully shut them up by the time we're through the midway point of the second quarter. That is when this game should start to build and get out of hand. All right? That is what should happen with what Nebraska has on the table. Now, I've also seen UCLA team in recent years play at home versus a dreadful Arizona State team when they're going swinging gate with like their third or fourth string quarterback and lose at home with a great defense. And that was with Chip Kelly at coach when we started to realize, yeah, this isn't going to work. Obviously different staff, but I've seen crazier things happen with a much worse team play a much better UCLA team come in and win at the Rose Bowl. And with this team, this same team, we can't take it for granted that this team can go out and win. The same team that's lost to UNLV, New Mexico, Northwestern on the road, also when UCLA was coming off a bye. This can't be a game taken for granted, but if you lose, you can cross off Tim Skipper's name off the list. He's done a lot of great things. Reconnecting with the recruits, with this staff, getting a buzz back to UCLA football to the point where, yeah, UCLA was getting their name hyped up during the beginning of the World Series when people across the country were watching both the Dodgers and, wait a minute, let's wake up that Saturday morning and watch them play Indiana. The result wasn't what we wanted. The competitiveness wasn't what we wanted, but everybody wants what Curt Cignetti has, the arrogance and the swagger that has been brought to one of the worst college football programs in America in their history, Indiana, and he's turned them into a national championship contender. So you're like, okay, obviously it was embarrassing to lose by 50, but Indiana's already done it once this year and has embarrassed just about everybody in their path. To forget that, flush it down the toilet, you go embarrass Nebraska. You go beat them by 20 to 30 points. You say, you come in here, I'm sorry, but we're going to hand you a big fat L and say goodbye. I wonder if there's even going to be any Nebraska fans coming because they're probably so disappointed with how the season's played out with the injury luck, the losses, and how things have not gone their way at the end of this season so far in 2025, which has been a recipe for disaster year after year after year for the fans in Lincoln. But you look at UCLA, you're going against TJ Lateef, who came in for Raiola, had 3 fumbles. They're already hurting on the O-line. Jerry Neuheisel has to showcase that the offense can move the ball, but I'm not sure why they can't go put up 25 points and still win this game by 3 scores. You can go win this 25-7 and be in control and not have us sweat it out. Unlike what happened in the Maryland game, where they had to fight, scrap, and claw all their way to get a last-second field goal to win that game. Take control and dominate. It's about time we get another embarrassing win for UCLA to embarrass the other opponent. It's about time. But after that, it's a little bit of a stretch. 3 ranked opponents, including the top team in the country. Is that a recipe for disaster? Or is this a UCLA team that can go get 2 to 3 more ranked wins and get themselves to a bowl? Well, let's talk about that next on Locked On UCLA. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And even if you missed the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Cruising on here, now it's time to reassess. Is this a team that, with their current trajectory, with the current schedule left, can actually make a bowl? Well, you have to beat Nebraska. And if you bank on that with a backup quarterback, a team that's traveling, injury prone at this moment with the Cornhusker faithful, I think you can maybe bank on that as a win. You can't take things for granted. I'm not saying it's an easy UCLA win. It should be. But UCLA, if you're trying to get to a bowl game, you've got 3 games against ranked opponents left. Washington, Ohio State, USC, not in that order, but UCLA is sitting there needing 3 more wins. You beat Nebraska, you have your 4th win. Oh, by the way, after the Nebraska game, you have the number 1 ranked team in the country, Ohio State, in mid-November, in Columbus, mind you, mid-November. And the Bruins got to go do that in a primetime game on NBC, and it's a night game in Columbus. So that's going to take a lot out of you. It just absolutely will. The cold, I haven't checked on that weather right now in Columbus in a couple of weeks, but that's a tall order to go beat Ohio State on the road, number 1 ranked team in the country. So that leaves us with almost a similar type of thing. Last year, the Bruins, their bowl season came down to beating a Washington and or USC, and they didn't in 2024. And now this year, you've got a Washington team that just snuck into the rankings, USC, another team that's been hovering just around near the top 20, and that's where USC sits in the first CFP rankings. Those are teams that have outside, super hopeful chances to be that team that can sneak into the college football playoff. And with the way some of these teams are ranked, it looks like you have to be a top 10 team to make it. So those teams, USC and Washington, are going to have to jump at least 10 spots. For now, they are competing for a CFP berth. I do think it's reasonable UCLA can compete with Washington at home. Now, it's a very tall ask, a tough ask, when they're coming off the Ohio State game. I wish there could have been the Ohio State game earlier, but, whatever it is, that's just how Big Ten play is. You're going to have to go play some tough team in the cold, in the Midwest, in the middle to late part of November. So UCLA, they go to Ohio State, and when you play in Washington with DeMond Williams Jr. against a guy who's rumored to potentially be your next coach, we'll see what that looks like with Washington and UCLA. When Washington comes into town, possibly in that week before Thanksgiving, the last home game of the year, where how distracted could Jedd Fisch be? Is he going to get attracted to the Florida job? Is someone else going to hire him if you're looking up? Or if you're looking at UCLA, is that going to be a week when Jedd Fisch is in town that there'll be a lot of negotiations? Is that a distraction week? Well, for UCLA and Tim Skipper, it should be an all business week. And I'm not sure if you beat a guy in his program that you want to hire him, right? UCLA already went out and beat James Franklin at Penn State, destroyed Jonathan Smith. Now, they didn't do the same things to New Mexico or UNLV, but those teams aren't of the same caliber then than they are now. You take on Washington, it can be a test on how much this team has grown. It's another dual threat QB, a team that can move the ball. DeMond Williams, not exactly the same guy as Devin Dampier, but you can showcase if you're Tim Skipper and you win that game in the Rose Bowl that one, you brought some energy against Washington because the energy was non-existent in August when the Bruins took on Utah. In your home finale, there's a chance that when the students are all possibly leaving for Thanksgiving break, when there's a chance to maybe get to a bowl game with this team that looked horrible early, has learned their lessons with what's been brought in, that could be a recipe for success. Now, to go win the game, that's a tall order, but it's still a quarterback that some of these guys have seen from a year ago. And then you go to USC. I don't know if I'm just this cocky guy in the crosstown rivalry, but I want that victory bell painted blue. For some reason, that USC game just does not scare me. Even if their playoff lives depended on it, which would include, I think, a USC win in Eugene. I don't think that's the case. Obviously, Lincoln Riley, one of the most overrated coaches in college football. He does have a good recruiting class. I would just love to stick it to USC in the Coliseum for the third consecutive time on the road in the Coliseum. I would love to. I really think this season comes down to UCLA beating Washington. I'm not coming out here saying UCLA is for sure going to beat USC, but if you beat Washington, then there's a little more incentive, a little more riding on that UCLA SC game. USC, maybe they're out of contention. What are they playing for? And you got a hungry UCLA team trying to get into a bowl game, as it was a few years ago, trying to embarrass a USC team that's out of contention and not really playing for a lot at that part of the season. Now, if they do go out and beat Oregon, I wonder if for some miracle reason, if they do that and they're still in contention, man, I would love to end their season. Would love to end their playoff contention and send them to some whatever bowl. Right now, yes, UCLA is trying to get to whatever bowl. But until then, I would love to see UCLA and the USC playoff hopes. I think they'll be done before Thanksgiving weekends, but it'd be great to give USC and Lincoln Riley another L. Because I'm listening to all this USC nonsense, various things around the airwaves here in Los Angeles. Yeah, they're going to go 9-3. Well, what about the team that's beaten the Trojans in the Coliseum a couple of years in a row? That's UCLA. So 3 ranked teams in a row, and the Bruins potentially have to win 2, if not all 3, to get to a bowl game. It's not ideal. You could bet against the Bruins, absolutely, in this quest to move forward, to get better, to get to a bowl game. But if Tim Skipper continues to get multiple ranked wins, if he can get Washington and USC in the victory column for the Bruins, that would give Tim Skipper 3 ranked wins this year. And that's not even including if the Bruins do something ridiculous against Ohio State. I'm just kind of dismissing that notion right now and kind of thinking reality-wise, if the Bruins can go out and beat a Washington USC, they already beat a then top 10 Penn State team before their quarterback got injured, their coach got fired, and their entire season, and maybe their program crumbled before everybody's eyes in the country. But that would be a couple of big-time wins. What's really hurting UCLA right now is the inability to complete the comeback against Northwestern, dropping the UNLV game, falling extremely flat in the game that got Deshaun Foster fired in the New Mexico game, because this was a schedule designed to get to a bowl game. This is a team that I think could have been at least 5 wins good right now. They could have been. That UNLV game was very winnable. UNLV can't stop anybody defensively, and the Bruins were shut out mostly for the first half in Vegas. And then the Northwestern game. Northwestern does things well. They have about 5 wins at the moment. But that game was there for the taking for UCLA. Was there for the taking, and the Bruins couldn't do it. And if you had won a couple of those games, banked those, you could be pushing, if you're UCLA, realistically, a 6 to 7, maybe 8-win campaign if things went well. Well, that's still potentially there, but you have to win every game. And that's asking a lot. So you just kind of look at yourselves like, man, this team could have been with a lot of momentum, but you also appreciate the effort Tim Skipper and the entire staff has put in from, man, while they might miss a bowl game, it's that New Mexico game, that UNLV game that cost them, but it took those lessons learned to realize that, hey, UCLA is a program that should have 8 wins this year. They should have 7 to 8. They should have been more competitive against Utah. All those shoulda, coulda, wouldas, what led to guys losing their jobs, 3 of which in the coordinating spot and for the head coach, Deshaun Foster. Now, if Tim Skipper can still get them to 6 to 7 wins, well, that's going to give him a shot. Absolutely going to give him a shot. But he does need to get to a bowl game at the very minimum, and the Bruins have to look absolutely competitive versus Ohio State. Bowl game, though, it's not likely, but it's still in the picture. And it truly comes down to, 1, absolutely win the Nebraska game, and then you have to beat Washington at home. Give us good vibes heading to the Coliseum with everything on the line for the Bruins with bowl game eligibility there. And then, as I've been hoping and praying for, UCLA, Tennessee in a bowl game, maybe Las Vegas Bowl would be fantastic. That would be fantastic. But you know what would be fantastic is if UCLA basketball, the men or the women, didn't have a head coach come out and say, yeah, the effort's not there. That's what Corey Close came out and said. So let's talk about that coming up next on Locked On UCLA. All right, cruising on, final segment here, Locked On UCLA. We're talking the UCLA women, and they had a dominant win. They put away San Diego State. They play in the Honda Center. There's maybe a couple of those reasons that playing in a new venue, one that had a hockey game the night before UCLA played San Diego State, all could have played a factor to why UCLA didn't shoot that well from three. A team that is supposed to be able to score a lot of points, get buckets, and be much better shooting the three than they've been in years past, when they just relied on Tamia Gardner, when they relied upon other shooters in Charisma Osborne a couple years ago. In this case, UCLA is being called out by their coach, Corey Close, who said prior to the season, the defensive intensity is not there. We can score, and we're relying on that. And then when UCLA couldn't score, Corey Close was asked, hey, do you think the defense carried the offense today? Did you guys lead with your defense? And she, very much like Mick Cronin, a little less so with the crazy quotability, came out with the same idea that says, our standard was not there. Our standard is not there. So here we have two basketball teams on opening night, both the men and the women, playing teams that, yes, you're supposed to win by 20 to 25 to 30 points, that underwhelmed. The UCLA men, certainly so. I already touched on them. But Corey Close has not been happy with her team's effort. Now she's playing without one of the top freshman recruits in the country, playing without another key role player, three-point shooter in Tamia Gardner for the time being. So you're going to see a lot of youth get some time early, just like how it was last year, before coming off the bench, where you need the starters to be intense. Kiki Rice, not even in the starting lineup. Charlize Ledger-Walker and Neepkins in that lineup together with Hawkes. And I think Hawkes might eventually lose that starting spot, but there's a reason that Close is having Hawkes in there in the starting lineup. All gas Gabs putting up, a double-double? And then you've got a team that's getting called out for lack of toughness, lack of effort, and I'm not exactly using her words, but you can see it from the last practice availability Corey Close had, the last media availability prior to the game, and then after the game, where she's just been disappointed in the team's effort. Well, yes, San Diego State was close, made it tough early for the Bruins. Ice cold from three certainly didn't help, but she's calling out their intensity and their integrity in terms of on play, on the court. Then the Bruins need to step it up. And that's a reason why we see Gabriela Hawkes on the court, who is going to give it all the time, rebounding defensively. While you might give a little bit of that offensively, the ability to stretch the floor from the three-point line, then that's why maybe a Kiki Rice isn't on the court. That's where you need the transfers to step it up, because you've had some of these key players be here for a while, like Kiki Rice, who's been here all 4 years, but she's coming off the bench now. That's a huge role. A little different when last year she had the shoulder injury and missed a couple of games early, but she came off the bench in game one, played a lot of minutes. You missed the energy and intensity that London Jones brought, but UCLA decided to upgrade on the wing. But are they going to match what UCLA needs intensity-wise, what the coach's focus is? Now, Charlize has been there for a year plus already. She's been there waiting, recovering for her moment to shine. And if she's healthy, she'll be great. And if she was healthy earlier this year, then, man, UCLA would have been gifted a superstar in the lineup at the right time. The Bruins just did not want to push it for her to have 10 to 15 games in her last season. She was like, I want a full season. Go, push up that pro draft stock after her college days are done. But with Charlize Ledger-Walker, you got a good ball handler, a scorer, potential shooter. Gianna Neepkins, you got to bring that intensity. And that's maybe the hope with Kiki Rice coming off the bench. I wonder what UCLA is going to look like in their home opener against UCSB. By the next time we talk, I believe that game will have been played or will be in the middle of being played. It's a morning game, the field trip game. You see this a lot in women's college basketball, where to pack the arenas out, they'll have a day game in the middle of the week where the middle schools, the elementary schools come out, scream their hearts out, scream their lungs out, and cheer very loudly, give some energy in the arena for games that might not be packed out, like namely UCLA versus a Big West team. That's just the honest truth of it. But there's got to be an intensity that goes with it, more than just the little kids screaming in their first home game this year for a top 3 team in the country. Because right around the corner, you're going to have an Oklahoma team that, yes, they did struggle night 1 heading into the fourth quarter, but they're still a top 10 team with Reagan Beers, Aaliyah Chavez. And the Sooners wanted to prove that the SEC is better than the Big Ten in all sports, including women's basketball. And UCSB, that's last tune-up. So I wonder if there'll be any lineup switches, if Cora Close will still be just as disappointed in her team. Because we can't have every basketball team, every sport on campus just be disappointed. Yes, some of it is coaches and cliches and coach speak. Yeah, we can be better. If you're perfect night 1, all right, then how do you grow? Yes, those things can all be true. But if it's lack of effort, lack of intensity, my goodness, what are we going to get from Mick Cronin and Corey Close? Just quotes all year? Well, if we do, that's what we're going to talk about, and we're going to analyze it. And while you'll come to Locked On UCLA and like, comment, subscribe, and download these episodes as we dissect it and discuss it for the rest of the season. So just around the corner, we'll have the UCLA women's home opener, and we'll discuss what the UCLA men need to do against Pepperdine, as we also lead you into the weekend coverage of UCLA football taking on Nebraska. Must win if they want to get to a bowl game this year. Hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. Like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for your support. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA. Fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.